and play on 2nd and 10. That's his youth right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
So today I'll be continuing with my college football game-by-game prediction and roster discussion videos. Today I'll be doing the TCU Horned Frogs. So TCU had the 26th ranked recruiting class in the country in 2025. They didn't have any 5-star players, but they did have 5 4-star players. And head coach Sonny Dykes enters his 4th season as TCU's head coach, and his time at TCU has been the opposite of consistent. In 2022, he had a really good season where they went 13-2 and made the college football playoff and even won a playoff game. And then he had a bad year in 2023 where they went 5-7. And then he had a good but not great year in 2024 where they went 9-4. So starting on the offensive side of the roster, they were good here in points per game. Last year, they averaged at 32.9 points per game, and it was because of their passing, though. TCU ranked 8th in the country in passing, averaging 12.9 passing yards per game, and I think they're going to be really good at that again because Josh Hoover returns at quarterback, which I think is going to be the biggest strength of TCU's team. I think Josh Hoover is probably a top 5 quarterback in college football and will probably someday be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Last season, he had 3,949 yards passing and threw 27 touchdown passes. Now, he did have 11 interceptions, which it does need to go down, but he averaged a good 8.4 yards per throw and completed a good 66.5% of his passes. He started all 13 games at quarterback for TCU last year, and he started 19 games in college. So at wide receiver, they do lose 3 good ones. They lose Jack Beck, who had over 1,000 yards last season, and they lose Johnny Paul Richardson, who had over 700 yards receiving last year, and they lose Savion Williams, who had over 600 yards last season. But they do return Eric McAllister, who had last year 39 catches for 762 and 5 touchdowns, averaging a very impressive 19.5 a catch. Here's a clip of a touchdown pass by Josh Hoover to Eric McAllister.
24 ESPN 300 class, so a big-time recruit. Hoover stays alive. He's got McAllister. How did he get that off? How does McAllister stay up and keep cruising? Unreal.
So they bring in a wide receiver from the FCS level, Jordan Dwyer, who was one of the FCS level's best wide receivers last season. He had 78 catches for 1,192 yards and 12 touchdowns, averaging 15.3 a catch. And he had 5 games of over 100 receiving yards last season. And they bring in a transfer wide receiver from Houston, Joseph Manjack, who played in 11 games last season and had only 22 catches for 351 and 3 touchdowns, but he did average 16 yards a catch and That was because Houston's passing was so horrible last year. He actually is a good wide receiver. In 2023, he had in 10 games 46 catches for 577 and 6 touchdowns. I think he'll be a good addition for TCU. So they should be good at wide receiver again. Now, running back is concerning. They didn't have any good running backs last year, and they didn't bring in any transfer running backs. They only averaged 113.9 rushing yards per game last season, which ranked 112th in the country. But that was because really of poor run blocking by the offensive line. They only averaged 3.7 yards per run because of it. And their offensive line does get 3 starters back, but they will need to play a lot better, and they do lose their best offensive lineman, a center, James Brockermeyer, who transferred. So now on the defensive side, they were pretty good in points allowed per game last season, giving up 21.7 per game. But their run defense was bad. They ranked 83rd at stopping the run, giving up 160.5 rushing yards per game. And I think that it will probably be a problem again this year. On the defensive line, they do have 2 out of 4 starters coming back, including their best defensive lineman, Devin Deal, who is a really good player. He had last year 46 tackles and 5.5 sacks and a pass breakup. At linebacker, they've got Namdai Obazer coming back, who had last year 81 tackles and 2.5 sacks and a forced fumble and an interception and a pass breakup. And they've got Caleb Alarms, or who didn't start any games last year but played in all 13 games and still had 54 tackles and 2 sacks. He transferred to TCU last year from California, where he had a really good season in 2023. I think he'll be good for them this year, but they do lose their best linebacker, Johnny Hodges, who's off to the NFL. The secondary was why their defense was as good as it was last year. They had a very good secondary, ranked 23rd at stopping the pass, giving up only 185.2 passing yards per game. I think they will probably take a step back this year in the secondary because they lose both starting cornerbacks. But the safeties are both back, and this will be the biggest strength of the defense, I think. Their safety combination, I think, will be one of the best in the country. With Bud Clark and Jamel Johnson. Clark had last year 67 tackles and 3 interceptions and 3 pass breakups and a forced fumble. Here's a clip of a pick six by him.
We're really happy for Max. First TCU player to ever win that award.
J.J. McCarthy
Whoa.
throws, and it's intercepted! Picked up and being brought back for a touchdown!
And Johnson had 73 tackles and 3 pass breakups and a forced fumble. Now for the game-by-game predictions. Starting with on the road at North Carolina. North Carolina, I think, is Colorado the second. They're the next clown show. Like Colorado, they brought in somebody famous from the NFL, except that he was a coach in the NFL. But being a NFL coach and a college coach is two completely different things. Nick Saban is a perfect example of that. He was the best college football coach ever, but in the NFL, he couldn't hardly win a game. That's why he took the Alabama job because he was doing so bad in the NFL. And this coach that North Carolina brought in is almost as old as Nick Saban is, and he's like Deion Sanders does at Colorado, filled up their roster with a bunch of transfers that aren't very good. North Carolina's a 5 or 6 win team this year. I think TCU beats them easily. And now Abilene Christian. So this should be a name your score kind of game for TCU where they get to put in their second string at halftime. But I say should because this same team did take, I remember, Texas Tech into overtime last year. But now SMU. So I think this is going to be a close shootout game. SMU doesn't have a proven running back either, but because they've got a good offensive line, I think TCU will struggle to stop their run game. But good news for the TCU offensive line in this game is SMU's defensive line, I think, is going to take a big step back this year. And at TCU's passing attack, I think, is even better than SMU's is. So both teams' big defensive strength is going to be their safeties. So there may not be able to be very many deep balls thrown in this game. But uh, TCU is the home team, and I don't really think SMU has a defensive advantage over them this year. I have a feeling TCU is going to get this win. So now on the road at Arizona State. Even though Arizona State does have four starters coming back in their secondary was kind of weak last year. Josh Hoover and his wide receivers may be able to have a big game in this one. Arizona State, though, will have a line of scrimmage advantage. Pretty big on both sides, and their offense, I think, will be more balanced than TCU's will. And Arizona State is, I think, the better team, and they're playing at home on a Friday night. I think it'll be close, but I've got to go with Arizona State. So now, Colorado. I think this is a good matchup for TCU because even though TCU, I think will have struggles in the run game and at the line of scrimmage this season, Colorado's is even worse. And Colorado does have some good defensive backs coming back, so they may be able to slow down the passing attack by TCU a little bit. But this is one game where TCU, I think it can probably get a run game going, and I think they beat Colorado. So now on the road at Kansas State, I don't think this is a good matchup for TCU. Chris Kleiman has turned Kansas State into a team like Utah with Kyle Whittingham. They're tough and physical, and they always play good defense, and they have a really good running game. And I think that. Kansas State will struggle to stop TCU's passing attack. I think that Josh Hoover and his wide receivers will have a good game in this one, but Kansas State, I think, will rush for well over 200 yards in this game. And I think Kansas State will have a good game offensively in this one because even though they're better known for their run game, they're not a bad passing team. Their quarterback, Avery Johnson, has a good chance to be an NFL quarterback someday. I've got to go with Kansas State in this one. And now Baylor. Baylor's offense, I think, is going to be even better than TCU's uh, because I think they'll be more balanced. I think they'll be able to run and pass in this game. Baylor's offensive line is much better than TCU's, but their defensive line, I think, is actually worse than TCU's is. This is another game where I think TCU may be able to get a run game going in. And like TCU, Baylor's safeties are really good. They can probably stop the deep balls by Josh Hoover. But I think this will be a close game, and I think that Baylor is the better team. But with the game being at home for TCU, I have a feeling they're going to get this win. So now on the road at West Virginia. So I've said many times I think West Virginia is going to struggle this year, but the coach that they bring back, Rich Rodriguez, is not an idiot. I think he will get them a couple of good wins this year, and I would be surprised if West Virginia finished last in the Big 12. And West Virginia, I don't think can slow down TCU's passing attack, but West Virginia is a team that I think is going to want to run the football, and their starting running back, Jaheim White, is a really good running back. For sure a future NFL running back, and they brought in another good, really good running back from SMU to help him out. Now, West Virginia's offensive line, I don't think is going to be very good, but TCU's defensive line won't be very good either. I don't think so. I think West Virginia will be able to run really well in this game, and it's on the road and at a tough place to play. I think it'll be close, but I have a feeling West Virginia is going to win this one. And now Iowa State. So the Iowa State offensive line will win the battle, I think, with the TCU defensive line. But Iowa State's defensive line, I think, is even worse than TCU's. This is another game where I think even though Iowa State will have a good day running, and I like their running backs, that TCU will probably be able to get somewhat of a running game going in. Now, I think Rocco Beck will make some big plays passing in this game, but the game is at home for TCU, and Iowa State loses their two best defensive players who were both defensive backs. So I think Josh Hoover will be able to make enough plays passing in this game to get TCU a close win. And now on the road at BYU, this will be a tough one, but because BYU loses most of their secondary, I don't think they can slow down TCU's passing attack. And BYU, I don't really think has a line of scrimmage advantage this year over TCU. Now, BYU, I think, will be a solid running team because their starting running back LJ Martin, I think, is the future NFL running back, but they don't really have a good running back number two to help him out. And with Retzloff leaving, I don't think that BYU is going to be anywhere close to TCU when it comes to passing. I think TCU is the better team. So even on the road, I'm gonna go with them to get this win. And now on the road at Houston. So even though Houston won't be a good team this year, I don't think they are a team that I think will beat somebody good this year. And I still like the coach there, Willie Fritz. He's the one that beat a 11-win Southern Cal team at Tulane, and he was left with a bad program. Dana Holgerson ran that program into the ground. And I really think in a few years he will have Houston competing for a Big 12 championship. And even though Houston only won 4 games last year, I knew they beat Kansas State, but I didn't even realize this until I did my research for this video that they actually beat TCU at TCU last year. And Houston isn't very good at the line of scrimmage, but I think they can handle TCU, and I think they'll be about as good as TCU is defensively. And Connor Wayman that they brought in from Texas A&M at quarterback, he's been inconsistent in his college career. At times he's looked like the 5-star quarterback that he is, but then at times he's looked average. But whatever version Houston gets of him, he'll be a big upgrade over what they had last year there. They were, I think, last in the country in passing. I have a feeling that Houston is going to get this win. And now Cincinnati, a team that I think will be able to handle TCU up front. I think this will be a pretty close game, and I think their new running back Tolly Walker will have a good game. And their quarterback Sorsby, even though he had a pretty good year last year, though he wasn't anywhere near as good as Josh Hoover. I don't think he's gonna play in the NFL like Hoover will. And I don't really think Cincinnati can slow down TCU's passing attack. And TCU is playing at home, and I think they're the better team. I'm going to go with them to get this win. So I've got TCU finishing the season at 8-4 overall and 5-4 in the conference. I think the line of scrimmage is probably going to be what stops them from making a possible appearance in the Big 12 championship game. But I still think this is going to be a pretty good team that is a contender in the Big 12. So thanks for watching, and please subscribe, and I'll be back soon.